You're leaving me to play nurse for a guy who lied about dying? Marcie didn't flinch. She zipped the suitcase we took to Cabo like she was packing for a weekend spa trip, not walking out on 20 years of marriage. And then she blocked me. No calls, no goodbye. Just silence. But that wasn't even the worst part. A week later, her sister told me the truth. Daniel wasn't dying. He was broke, fired, dumped. And Marcie? She was playing me, banking on my loyalty to bankroll her fantasy. I nearly lost everything. My business, my sanity. But I didn't just survive. I rebuilt. And 6 months later, she came back, pregnant. She thought I'd still be waiting. She had no idea what I'd built. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. My name is Michael Kessler, and I'm 48 years old. After 20 years of sweat and determination, I've built a construction company that keeps our suburban home comfortable and Marcie free to pursue her art and charity work. Most evenings, I sit in my workshop while her laughter drifts down from her studio, the scent of oil paints mixing with fresh-cut cedar. At least, that's how it used to be. These days, my wife's smile fades whenever Daniel, her college ex, comes up in conversation. Her shoulders tense, her eyes dart away, and the silence between us grows heavier. I've learned in construction that foundation problems start small, a hairline crack, a slight settling. But I didn't build this business by being unprepared. I keep my tools sharp and my contingency plans sharper. But let me start from the beginning. I remember that Thursday like it was carved in stone. The Martinez project had wrapped early, rare in my line of work, and I decided to surprise Marcie by coming home for lunch. Maybe grab some of that Thai food she loved from the place downtown. You know the kind of gesture a husband makes when he's trying to bridge a growing gap? The garage door hummed open, and I caught her voice drifting down from upstairs. Urgent whispers that stopped dead when my boots hit the hardwood. 20 years of marriage teaches you things. Like how silence can sound guilty. I found her in our bedroom, phone clutched to her chest like a shield. Her face was flushed, and those artist's hands of hers were trembling. "Mike," she said, "I didn't expect you home." Clearly. The word came out harder than I meant it to. "Everything okay?" She sank onto our bed, the one I'd built her as an anniversary gift 5 years back. The maple headboard still gleamed like honey in the afternoon light. "We need to talk." Ever notice how those 4 words never lead anywhere good? "It's Daniel," she said, and my stomach dropped. He's dying, Mike. Cancer, stage 4. Her voice cracked. He has no one. No family, no real friends left. He needs help. I stood there, trying to process what she wasn't saying. "And you're telling me this because?" "Because I have to help him." She met my eyes, and I saw something there I'd never seen before, determination mixed with desperation. "It's not romantic, Mike. It's my duty. As a human being, you understand that, right?" I didn't. Not even close. "Your duty is here, Marcie. With me. With the life we built." She was already moving, pulling a suitcase from our closet. The same powder blue one we'd taken to Cabo last spring. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." "Harder?" I watched her methodically folding clothes, selecting items with the same care she used, choosing colors for her paintings. "You're leaving me for a dying ex-boyfriend, and I'm making it hard?" "I'm not leaving you," she insisted, but her hands never stopped packing. "I'm helping someone in need. You're the most generous man I know, Mike. Please try to understand." The thing about being in construction, you learn to spot when something's being demolished to make way for something new. I could feel our marriage crumbling under my feet. "How long?" My voice sounded distant, even to me. "I don't know." She zipped the suitcase with finality. "As long as he needs me." I followed her downstairs, watching this woman I thought I knew so well transform into a stranger before my eyes. Remember that Thai food I'd planned to surprise her with? Funny how fast plans can change. She paused at the door, car keys jingling in her hand. "I'll call you when I'm settled." "Marcie." My throat felt like I'd swallowed concrete. If you walk out that door. But she was already gone, the screen door banging shut behind her. Just like that. 20 years reduced to the sound of tires on gravel and fading taillights. I stood there until the sun started setting, casting long shadows across my living room floor. Eventually, I climbed the stairs back to our bedroom. The place still smelled like her lavender lotion. Her pillow still held the indent of her head from that morning. You ever sit in perfect stillness and feel your whole world shift? I did that night, perched on the edge of our bed, staring at that goddamn pillow. The same bed where we'd laughed, loved, planned our future. Now it felt like a museum piece, something that preserved memories of a life that no longer existed. I picked up her pillow, caught between wanting to breathe in her scent one last time and wanting to throw it through the window. Instead, I just held it, wondering if she was ever coming back. Wondering if I even wanted her to. The first week crawled by like a wounded animal. I called twice a day, morning and night, listening to her phone ring until voicemail kicked in. Each time, I left messages that got progressively shorter. Please call me back became, just let me know you're okay, became nothing but heavy breathing before I hung up. You know that feeling when you're working demo and you hit a load-bearing wall? That sudden give that tells you something crucial just broke? That's what her silence felt like. I sent texts, emails, even wrote her a letter by hand, though my calloused fingers cramped around the pen. Nothing but static on her end. The house felt wrong, too big, too quiet. Even Max, our golden retriever, started spending nights in the guest room instead of our bed. Smart Dog knew things had changed. Sleep? Forget it. I'd lie there replaying every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I'd missed. That summer vacation where she seemed distant. Was she thinking of him then? Those nights she stayed late at charity events. Were they already in touch? The questions ate at me like rust on steel. My crew started giving me worried looks. I'd show up to sites with bags under my eyes, barking orders that didn't make sense. Missed 3 client meetings in 2 weeks. Rick, my foreman, had to cover for me when I zoned out during a foundation inspection. "Boss," he said, "you're gonna get somebody hurt like this." He wasn't wrong. The next day, I nearly took my thumb off with a circular saw. That's when I knew I had to get my head straight, or what was left of my life would follow my marriage down the drain. Then came that Friday at Miller's Market. I was standing in the produce section, staring at avocados like they held the secrets of the universe, when I heard Sarah's voice. Marcie's sister always did have that high-pitched tone that could cut through concrete. "Mike, oh my God, you look terrible." She pulled me into one of those awkward half-hugs people give at funerals. "Have you heard from her?" I shook my head. My throat felt like I'd been gargling sand. "She blocked my number last week." "Blocked you?" Sarah's perfectly plucked eyebrows shot up. "That seems extreme. I mean, it's not like Daniel's actually dying." The fluorescent lights suddenly seemed too bright. "What?" "Oh, you know what I mean. He just lost his job at that tech startup. And Jenny, that girl he was seeing, she dumped him right after. He's depressed, sure, but cancer?" She laughed, then caught my expression. "Mike? You okay?" The basket nearly slipped from my numb fingers. Oranges rolled across the floor like bright rubber balls. "Sarah," I managed. "What are you talking about?" Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh no. Oh God. She told you he had cancer?" I gripped the nearest display to steady myself. Somewhere behind me, a stock boy was chasing down my escaped produce. She said, "Stage 4, terminal." "Mike, I'm so sorry." Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. "I thought you knew. I mean, everyone in the family knows he just had a rough patch. Lost his apartment, couldn't make rent. But he's not sick. Not like that." The pieces clicked together like a badly framed door finally finding its jam. The whispered phone calls, the rushed departure, the complete shutdown of communication. This wasn't about duty or compassion or any of that bullshit. I'd been played. My chest felt tight, like someone had ratcheted a clamp around my ribs. "How long?" I heard myself ask. "How long has she been talking to him?" Sarah shifted uncomfortably. I'm not sure." "Sarah." My voice came out low and steady. Dangerous. How? Long? A few months? Maybe since January? She wouldn't meet my eyes. Mike, I should go. I've already said too much. I barely noticed her hurrying away. Just stood there, surrounded by scattered fruit and fluorescent lights, while my world tilted on its axis. January. She'd been planning this since January. The stockboy appeared at my elbow, holding out my recovered oranges. Sir, you want these back in your basket? I looked at him, then at the fruit. Such a normal thing, buying oranges. Such a normal life I thought I had. Keep them, I said, and walked out of the store. The drive home from Miller's Market was a blur. I remember sitting in my truck for a long time, engine off, just staring at my garage door. You know that moment when your whole world shifts and nothing looks the same anymore? That's where I was. I didn't eat dinner that night, or breakfast the next morning, or much of anything for days after. Food tasted like cardboard, and my stomach was too knotted to keep much down anyway. The smell of coffee, Marcie's favorite morning ritual, made me want to throw up. Buddy, my old chocolate lab, became my shadow. He'd follow me from room to room, his nails clicking on the hardwood floors, watching me with those worried brown eyes. Dogs know, you know? They can sense when something's broken inside you. He stopped sleeping in his usual spot by the bedroom door and started camping out at the foot of the guest room bed where I'd been staying. Couldn't handle our bedroom anymore. Too many ghosts. Work went from bad to worse. Lost the Henderson project when I missed a crucial meeting. The Wilsons canceled their renovation after I sent them the wrong material estimates 3 times in a row. Rick tried to cover for me, but there's only so much a foreman can do when the boss is falling apart. Mike, he said one afternoon, finding me staring at blueprints I wasn't really seeing. Take some time. The company won't collapse if you step back for a week. But I couldn't stop. Working was the only thing keeping me from completely losing it. Even if I was doing a piss-poor job. Nights were the worst. You don't realize how loud silence can be until you're drowning in it. The house creaked and settled, and every sound made me think she was coming back. The art room door would creak, and my heart would jump, but it was just the wind. Her favorite mug in the dishwasher. Her shampoo in the shower. Every corner held some reminder of the life we'd built, the life she'd thrown away for a lie. I'd lie awake, Buddy snoring softly nearby, and replay every moment, every conversation, every touch, looking for clues I'd missed. Was any of it real? Had she been thinking of him all along? 20 years of marriage, and I couldn't tell what was true anymore. 3 weeks after the grocery store revelation, I found myself sitting in a lawyer's office downtown. Ellen Matthews had handled some contracts for my business years back. She took one look at me and pulled out a bottle of water from her mini fridge. "You look like hell, Mike," she said, straight to the point as always. "What's going on?" I told her everything. The lies, the manipulation, Daniel's fake cancer. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. "Legal separation," she said. "That's what you need right now. Protects your assets while you figure out next steps. And frankly, from what you've told me, I'd start preparing for divorce proceedings." My throat closed up at that word. Divorce. Making it real. Final. "She might come back," I heard myself say, hating how weak it sounded. Ellen's face softened. "Mike, do you want her to, after this?" I looked down at my hands. They were steady, even if nothing else in my life was. "No, but I need to handle this right." "Then let's do the separation quietly. File the paperwork. Get everything in order. You don't have to tell anyone until you're ready." She pulled out some forms. "This gives you breathing room to think clearly." I signed the papers that afternoon. Didn't tell my crew. Didn't tell my friends. Not even Buddy got an explanation for why I sat on the back porch that night, nursing a bourbon and staring at the garden Marcie had planted last spring. The roses were dying. She'd always been the one with the green thumb. Now they were withering, brown around the edges, dropping petals like tears. Somehow, that hit harder than anything else, watching something beautiful she'd created slowly die from neglect. Buddy rested his head on my knee, and I scratched behind his ears. "Just you and me now, old boy," I whispered. The words felt heavy in the evening air. Real. Final. I needed to get control back of my life, my business, my sanity. The legal separation was step one. But as I sat there, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors Marcie would have wanted to capture in her oils, I knew there was a long road ahead. I hadn't planned on going to Harrison's Hardware that Saturday. The kitchen faucet had been dripping for weeks, but I'd been putting it off. Funny how the little things pile up when you're barely keeping your head above water. The rain was coming down in sheets when I pulled into the parking lot, and I sat there for a minute, watching the windshield wipers push back and forth, not really wanting to move. You ever notice how rain makes everything look different? The world gets softer, blurred around the edges. Maybe that's why I didn't recognize Rick at first when he came walking up, baseball cap pulled low against the downpour. We'd served together, stayed friends after, and he'd been my go-to foreman for the past decade. But right then, he could have been a stranger. "Mike?" His voice cut through the drum of rain on the roof. "That you sitting out here like a lost puppy?" I forced a smile, but Rick wasn't buying it. He'd always been able to read me like a blueprint. "Jesus, brother, when's the last time you shaved?" He peered through my window, frowning. Or slept. I ran a hand over my face, feeling the scruff. "Just need a washer for the kitchen sink." "What you need is coffee. Come on." He tapped the hood of my truck. "Linda's is still open." I wanted to argue, but Rick had that look, the same one he'd worn in Baghdad when he'd decided something was happening, period. 20 minutes later, we were sliding into a booth at Linda's Diner, the vinyl seats squeaking beneath us. The place smelled like coffee and grilled onions, exactly the same as it had for the past 30 years. "2 coffees, black," Rick told the waitress before I could open my mouth. "And some of those apple fritters if you've got 'em." The silence stretched between us until the coffee arrived. Steam curled up from the mugs, and I wrapped my hands around mine, soaking in the warmth. "Talk," Rick said simply. And damn if I didn't. Everything spilled out like water from a broken dam. Marcie leaving, the cancer lie, the blocked calls, the legal separation I'd filed in secret. Rick just listened, the way he used to when we'd pull night watch together, letting me get it all out. When I finally ran dry, he leaned back, coffee forgotten. "Remember Lieutenant Rogers?" The question caught me off guard. "What about him?" "Remember how he handled that ambush outside Fallujah? Didn't panic, didn't rush in. He assessed, adapted, and turned that mess into a win." Rick's eyes locked onto mine. "That's what you need to do now." I stared into my coffee. "This isn't combat, Rick." "No, it's not. It's personal, which makes it harder." He pushed his empty mug aside. "But the principle's the same. Don't just move on. Upgrade. Make her regret the second she left." Something sparked in my chest at those words, a feeling I thought had died the day Marcie walked out. "How?" "Start with you. Hit the gym. Get your head straight. And don't give me that look. There's no shame in therapy. Then we focus on the business. You've got good bones there, but you've been playing it safe. Time to expand." He pulled out his phone, started typing. "I know some guys, veterans looking for work. Solid craftsmen. You take care of yourself. I'll help build the crew." The rain had stopped by then, sunlight breaking through the clouds outside. Rick was still talking, laying out plans like we were prepping for a mission, and for the first time in months, I felt something like hope. "Why are you doing this?" I had to ask. He looked at me like I was dense. "Because that's what brothers do." He threw some bills on the table, standing up. "Now you going to sit there feeling sorry for yourself, or are you ready to build something better?" I stood up, and my reflection in the window caught me off guard. I looked worn, beaten down. But there was something else there, too. A glint in my eye I recognized from younger days. "Better," I said firmly. "We build it better." The next morning, my alarm went off at 5 a.m. I lay there for a minute, staring at the ceiling, Rick's words echoing in my head. Upgrade. Make her regret it. My joints creaked as I rolled out of bed, a reminder of how long I'd been letting myself go. The old YMCA hadn't changed much since I'd last been there. Same faded murals on the walls, same slightly musty smell of sweat and rubber mats. but walking in with my ancient gym bag felt like crossing some kind of line. You ever notice how the first step back is always the hardest? I stood there looking at the weight rack, feeling like an imposter. Then this older guy, must have been pushing 70, nodded at me while curling a dumbbell that would have made guys half his age struggle. "First day back?" he asked, not even breathing hard. "That obvious, huh?" He grinned. "We were all first day back once. Start light, stay consistent. See you tomorrow?" I nodded, something tight in my chest loosening a bit. Started with just the bar on bench press, humbling as hell, but necessary. By the time I finished that first workout, everything hurt, but it was a clean kind of pain, the kind that meant change. Back home, I pulled my tools out of the garage. Some had a thin film of rust starting, another sign of how far I'd let things slide. Spent an hour just cleaning and oiling them, the familiar motions bringing back memories of learning the trade. The smell of 3-in-1 oil took me right back to watching my old man maintain his tools after work, teaching me the right way to care for what matters. Rick wasn't kidding about knowing guys. Within a week, he'd introduced me to 3 veterans looking for work, all skilled craftsmen who'd learned their trades in the service. Tom was a master electrician, Marcus could do finished carpentry that looked like art, and James knew HVAC systems inside and out. We started small, taking on projects for friends who'd been asking for help. Mrs. Henderson's deck rebuild was our first real job as a team. She'd been after me to fix it for months, even before. The old wood was rotting, dangerous, really. We stripped it down to the foundation and built it back stronger, using better materials, better techniques. Every morning, she'd bring out coffee and watch us work, telling stories about her late husband. "He would have loved this," she said one day, running her hand along the smooth cedar railing. "You boys are doing him proud." Word spread. More projects came in. Rick helped me streamline everything. Proper contracts, better scheduling, materials management. The business wasn't just surviving anymore. It was growing. We were building something real. The therapy part? That was harder. Took 3 tries to find someone I could actually talk to. Dr. Chen didn't push, didn't judge, just listened and asked the right questions. First session, I couldn't even say Marcie's name. Just sat there, throat tight, hands clenched. "Start wherever you can," she said quietly. "We'll get to the rest." So, I talked about work instead, about the satisfaction of building things that last, about the weight of responsibility when people trust you with their homes. Somehow, that led to talking about trust itself, how you build it, how it breaks, how maybe it's like a house. The foundation matters more than the paint job. Weeks passed. The routine became my anchor. Gym at dawn, job sites all day, therapy on Thursdays. I was sleeping better, eating regular meals again. Even Buddy seemed more relaxed, spending less time following me around like he was afraid I'd disappear. But here's the thing about rebuilding after a storm. Part of you stays weather-wise. I caught myself checking the radar more often, mentally marking the exits in every room. The business was solid, my body was stronger, my head was clearer. But something in me remained coiled, ready. Not for her, exactly, just ready. Rick noticed, of course. We were finishing up a bathroom remodel when he brought it up. "You're doing the work," he said, checking the level on the new vanity. "But you're still waiting for the other shoe to drop." I adjusted the mirror, buying time before answering. "Maybe I am." "That's not necessarily bad," he replied, stepping back to admire our work. Being prepared is different from being stuck. It was just another Tuesday in late October, the kind of morning where the rain hits the windows in sheets and everything outside looks like it's underwater. I was in my home office, reviewing bids for a major renovation project, when the doorbell rang. Buddy's head snapped up from his spot by my feet, but he didn't bark, weird for him. I wasn't expecting anyone. The crew was on a job site across town, and Rick was meeting suppliers all morning. Walking to the door, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. Different man than 6 months ago. Stronger, steadier. The doorbell rang again. I opened the door and felt the world tilt sideways. Marcie stood there, soaked from the rain, water dripping from her dark hair onto her shoulders. But that wasn't what stopped my breath. Her coat was open, revealing a clearly pregnant belly. "I want to come home," she said softly, attempting a weak smile. My heart didn't leap like it might have months ago. Instead, it clenched tight, like a fist closing around something precious, something that needed protecting. I kept my face carefully blank, the way I'd learned in therapy. Dr. Chen called it a neutral mask, not hostile, not welcoming, just present. "You're wet," I said finally, stepping aside. "Come in." She hesitated for a moment, like she'd expected something different. A warmer welcome, maybe, or an outright rejection. The uncertainty in her eyes told me she hadn't planned this moment as carefully as she usually planned things. I led her to the kitchen, not the living room where we used to curl up together, not anywhere too intimate. The kitchen was neutral territory, business territory. She sat at the island while I made coffee, my movements deliberate and unhurried. The familiar ritual gave me time to think, to steady my hands that wanted to shake. "You're not having any?" she asked when I only set one mug down, her old favorite, the one with the painted sunflowers. "Switched to tea months ago," I replied, staying on my side of the island. "Doctor's orders." Her eyes widened slightly at that, taking in the changes she could see, the muscle I'd put on, the better posture, the calm I'd fought hard to build. I saw her gaze drift to my left hand. The ring was gone. "Mike," she started, then paused to wrap her hands around the coffee mug. "I know I have no right to just show up like this, but things changed." I waited. The rain drummed against the windows, filling the silence between us. Buddy had followed us in but stayed by the door, unusually still, watching. "Daniel," she swallowed hard. "He changed once the baby." She gestured helplessly at her stomach. "How far along?" I asked, my voice level. 7 months, she whispered. I did the math in my head. She'd left 8 months ago. The timeline was clear as crystal. "He's not the man I thought he was," she continued, her voice strengthening with what I recognized as rehearsed sincerity. "I made a terrible mistake, Mike. I know that now. But this baby deserves a stable home, a good life, the kind of life you and I could provide." The kind of life I could provide, she meant. My jaw tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. She was still talking, something about fresh starts and forgiveness, but I was watching her hands. They kept moving from the mug to her belly and back, nervous energy she couldn't contain. "You're staying somewhere?" I asked when she paused for breath. She nodded. "A motel off Route 40, just temporarily, I was hoping." "You should get back before the rain gets worse," I said, still calm. "We can talk more tomorrow if you'd like." Something flickered across her face, relief mixed with uncertainty. She hadn't expected this measured response, this lack of either passion or anger. The old Mike would have reacted differently. But the old Mike didn't exist anymore. "Tomorrow then," she agreed, standing carefully. "Thank you for the coffee." I walked her to the door, watched her make her way to the rental car parked across the street. She turned back once, one hand protectively over her belly, but I had already closed the door. Buddy pressed against my leg, and I reached down to scratch his ears. "I know, boy," I murmured. "I know." The rain kept falling outside, but inside my mind, everything was crystal clear. 6 months of rebuilding myself hadn't just made me stronger, it had made me smarter. And Marcie had no idea what was coming. The next morning dawned gray and damp, matching my mood perfectly. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night sitting in my workshop, turning over old memories like worn coins. You ever notice how differently things look when you step back? How patterns emerge that you missed when you were too close? Marcie arrived exactly at 10, just like she used to time her charity meetings. Some habits don't change, I guess. She'd traded yesterday's rain-soaked outfit for one of those flowing cardigans she loved, soft purple making her look both delicate and purposeful, the kind of outfit she wore when she wanted something. I led her to the living room this time, let her settle into her old spot on the couch, watch her fingers trace the familiar patterns on the throw pillow she'd picked out years ago. For a moment, the scene was so familiar it hurt. Her there, morning light filtering through the curtains she'd chosen, everything exactly as it had been. Except nothing was the same at all. "I brought breakfast," she said, lifting a paper bag from that bakery downtown she loved. "Those cinnamon rolls you always said were better than your mom's." My mother's cinnamon rolls. Sunday mornings with flour everywhere, her humming while she worked. The memory hit hard, but I kept my face neutral. "Coffee's ready," I said, instead, heading to the kitchen. When I returned with 2 mugs, regular for her, decaf for me, she was arranging the pastries on the coffee table like she was hosting one of her art gallery events. Always the perfectionist, my Marcie. Or rather, just Marcie now. "I've had time to think," she started, wrapping her hands around her mug. "About everything. About us." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Daniel. He changed after I moved in. Or maybe he was always that way, and I just couldn't see it back in college. He started drinking more, missing doctor's appointments that didn't exist." She touched her belly. "When I told him about the baby, he just shut down." I watched her take a careful sip of coffee, noted how her hand trembled slightly. "He said he wasn't ready, that it wasn't what he'd signed up for. Can you believe that?" After everything. She gave a bitter laugh. I realized what a terrible mistake I'd made. Not just with him, but with us. With you. The silence stretched between us. She filled it with more words, like she always did when she was nervous. "I know I hurt you, Mike. I know I broke everything we built. But this baby, it deserves better than a father who runs away. It deserves a real home, stability, all the things you and I had." Had, past tense. At least she got that part right. "You're the most honorable man I've ever known," she continued, her voice softening. "And I know it's asking so much, but we could start fresh. Build something new, better even. You always wanted children." That hit like a punch to the gut. Yeah, I had wanted kids. Had brought it up a few times over the years. She'd always had reasons to wait. Her art, her volunteer work, the timing never quite right. "The baby would be so lucky to have you as a father," she pressed on. "And I still love you, Mike. I never stopped. I just got lost for a while." She reached for my hand then. I stood up instead, walked to my office without a word. When I came back, I was carrying the envelope I'd prepared weeks ago, right after that first conversation with Rick. "What's this?" she asked, but her smile was already faltering. Some part of her knew. "Divorce papers," I said quietly, placing them on the coffee table between us. "Already filed. You just need to sign." The color drained from her face. "Divorce." But I thought, that I'd fold? The words came out calmer than I felt. "That I'd be so grateful you came back. I'd raise another man's child and pretend none of this happened? Mike, please, just listen." "I have been listening, Marcie. For 20 years, I listened. Now it's your turn." Her hands clutched the envelope, knuckles white against the manila paper. The perfect tableau she'd tried to set. Breakfast, coffee, reconciliation, lay forgotten between us. And in her eyes, I saw the moment she realized this wasn't going to go her way. Not this time. But I wasn't done. Not even close. There was still the laptop waiting in my office, loaded with everything Rick had helped me gather. Sometimes the foundation has to crack completely before you can build something new. I watched her fingers tremble against the divorce papers, her face cycling through shock, hurt, and finally, there it was, that flash of indignation I'd been waiting for. The mask slipped. "Cold?" Marcie's voice rose sharply. "After everything we've been through, that's how you're going to be?" She shoved the envelope away like it was contaminated. 20 years of marriage, and you won't even try to understand? To forgive?" I had to hand it to her. She'd always known how to play the wounded party. Even now, with her belly swollen with another man's child, she was trying to make me the villain. Funny how that worked. "The Mike I married would never do this," she continued, getting to her feet. Her voice cracked with practiced precision. "He believed in second chances. In love. What happened to that man?" He woke up. I kept my tone level, reached for my laptop that I'd positioned on the side table earlier. And you might want to sit back down for this part. I don't need to hear whatever rehearsed speech you've prepared. The first notes of her laughter through the speakers stopped her cold. Then Daniel's voice, slightly tinny but unmistakable. So, he still doesn't suspect anything? I watched her face as the recording played on. The color drained from her cheeks as her own voice filled the room. Mike, please. He thinks I'm playing Florence Nightingale. You should see how proud he is, supporting my noble sacrifice. More laughter. As long as the checks keep clearing. God, you're amazing, Daniel's voice oozed through the speaker. And he's just, what? Cool with bankrolling everything? He built this life for me, the house, the charity work, all of it. You really think he's going to risk losing that now? A pause. Then her voice again softer. Besides, he's always been simple, sweet, but simple, like a loyal dog. I'd heard this recording at least 20 times while building my case. Each time, that particular line had cut deep. Now, watching her realize what I had, it felt different, cleansing almost. Turn it off, she whispered. I didn't. The best part? Recording, Marcie continued. He's so desperate to believe I'll come back, he's not even asking questions. We could probably stretch this out for months. Mike, please. Her voice was different now. Smaller. That wasn't I didn't mean. I closed the laptop with a soft click. Didn't mean for me to hear it, or didn't mean to say it. She sank back onto the couch, hands pressed against her temples. You don't understand. Daniel and I, we were just talking. People say things they don't mean when they're scared, when they're trying to figure things out. You figured things out all right. I stood, straightening my shoulders. By the way, I sent copies to my lawyer last week, and to the board at your precious foundation. I let that sink in. They seemed particularly interested in how their vice chair of ethics handles her personal affairs. The change was instant. Her face contorted with fury as she launched to her feet. You had no right. Do you have any idea what you've done? Actually, I do. I met her rage with calm. I did exactly what you taught me. I protected myself. They'll remove me from the board. She was nearly screaming now. Everything I've built, everything we built, I corrected quietly. Everything you threw away for a con man who couldn't even stick around for his own kid. That hit home. She grabbed her purse, hands shaking so badly she could barely clutch it. This isn't over, she spat, heading for the door. You'll regret this, Mike, I swear to God. No, I cut in, still keeping my voice steady. I won't. The door slammed behind her hard enough to rattle the windows. I stood there in the sudden silence, listening to her car start up, the tires squealing as she peeled out of the driveway. But I didn't feel the satisfaction I'd expected. Not yet. Because she was right about one thing, this wasn't over. The recording was just the first domino. I'd spent months setting up the rest, and they were already starting to fall. 2 days crawled by like molasses in January. I kept myself busy with work, triple-checking measurements for a custom deck project I'd been putting off. Anything to keep my mind from constantly refreshing the news feeds. You know that feeling when you're waiting for something big to drop? Like that moment right before a thunderstorm breaks? I was out back with Buddy, checking lumber supplies, when my phone started buzzing like an angry hornet's nest. The Foundation's press release hit every local news outlet at once. Vice Chair of Ethics Committee suspended amid personal conduct investigation. They didn't name names in the headline, but everyone who mattered would know exactly who they meant. Buddy looked up at me, tail wagging slow and steady, like he knew something was happening but wasn't sure if it was celebration time yet. I scratched behind his ears. Not yet, boy. But soon. The story spread like wildfire through our suburb. By noon, someone had leaked the audio to one of those drama-hungry local news blogs. My phone kept lighting up with notifications. Seems Marcie's name was trending, and not in the way she'd always hoped. I switched it to silent and went back to work. The Wood didn't care about social media drama. And neither did I. Remember those summer afternoons when you'd sit on the porch, watching storm clouds roll in? That's what it felt like. Every hour brought a new wave of revelations. Turns out I wasn't the only one Marcie and Daniel had played. 3 other marks came forward with similar stories. Each one thought they were helping a dying man, only to find themselves ghosted once the money dried up. Rick stopped by that evening with a six-pack and that knowing grin of his. We sat in my garage, watching the sunset paint the sky orange while Buddy dozed at our feet. "Saw the news," Rick said, popping open 2 bottles. "You didn't just win, brother. You buried them with their own shovel." I took a long pull from my beer. Wasn't about winning. No, he raised an eyebrow. It was about truth. I gestured with my bottle toward the quiet street. All those years I thought I was building something real. But you can't build anything solid on lies. Rick nodded, understanding in his eyes. We'd both seen enough combat to know. Sometimes the worst wounds are the ones you never see coming. The next morning brought more fallout. Daniel's social media went dark overnight. Every account deleted, phone disconnected, like a ghost vanishing in daylight. Marcie tried calling me twice, but I let it go to voicemail. Whatever crisis she was facing, it wasn't my problem anymore. I took Buddy for an extra long walk that afternoon, letting him chase squirrels while I cleared my head. The neighborhood felt different now. Neighbors who used to avoid eye contact suddenly wanted to chat. Mrs. Peterson from 3 doors down actually crossed the street to tell me how sorry she was about that awful woman. I thanked her politely but kept walking. I didn't need their pity or their gossip. Back home, I found Rick waiting in my driveway. He had that look, the one that said he knew something I needed to hear. "Daniel's gone," he said without preamble. "Cleaned out his apartment last night. Landlord found the keys in the mailbox this morning." I wasn't surprised. Men like Daniel, they're like those house flippers who cut corners. The moment things get tough, they disappear, leaving someone else to deal with the mess. "How's Marcie taking it?" Rick asked, though we both knew he didn't really care. I shrugged. "Wouldn't know. Haven't answered her calls." Rick's laugh was sharp and satisfied. "Karma's not done with them yet, is it?" "No," I said, watching Buddy roll in the fresh grass. "But that's not our problem anymore." The Foundation's investigation was still ongoing, but we all knew how it would end. Marcie's carefully constructed image was crumbling, brick by brick, just like she'd tried to do to my life. But unlike her, I hadn't needed to throw a single stone. They'd built their own gallows. I just made sure everyone could see them. That evening, I sat in my workshop running sandpaper along a piece of oak I was shaping into a new coffee table. Each stroke stripped away another layer, revealing the true grain beneath. Kind of fitting, when you think about it. 3 weeks crawled by like molasses in winter. I threw myself into work, taking on bigger projects, keeping my mind focused on things I could build with my own 2 hands. You ever notice how time moves differently when you're waiting for the other shoe to drop? Yeah, me too. Rick kept me updated whether I wanted it or not. That's the thing about small towns. News travels faster than a wildfire in August. He'd stop by the job sites, pretending to check on supplies, but really just itching to share the latest gossip. "Heard from Jenny at the courthouse," he said one morning, leaning against my truck. "Your ex tried filing for child support. Daniel's nowhere to be found, though. Can't serve papers to a ghost." I kept measuring the lumber I was working with, letting the familiar numbers ground me. Not my circus anymore. The old me would have felt something. Anger, maybe, or satisfaction. But standing there in the morning sun, all I felt was nothing. Like watching storm damage on someone else's street. Remember those magic 8 balls we had as kids? How the answer would slowly float up through the murky blue liquid? That's how the truth about Daniel emerged. Piece by piece, the full picture surfaced. He'd cleared out his apartment the same night the scandal broke, leaving nothing but unpaid bills and unanswered questions. Classic Daniel, when things got tough, he got going. Sarah, from my local coffee shop, she's got a cousin who works at Marcie's lawyer's office, filled me in on the legal circus. Marcie had tried everything to track Daniel down. Private investigators, social media searches, even hired some tech guy to trace his digital footprint. But Daniel had pulled his disappearing act like a pro. No forwarding address, no social media, not even a working phone number. "You know what kills me?" Rick said one evening as we were closing up the workshop. She actually thought she could just waltz back into your life, use you as a backup plan. I wiped sawdust from my hands, thinking about the house I'd built for us. People show you who they are eventually. Just got to pay attention. The bankruptcy filing made local news. Small item, back pages, but it was there. Local charity director files Chapter 7, followed by a neat little summary of her fall from grace. No mention of Daniel, no mention of me. Just cold, hard numbers showing a woman who'd gambled everything on a con man's promises. Legal bills had piled up faster than autumn leaves. Between the private investigators, the paternity suit attempts, and her mounting personal debt, Marcie had dug herself into a hole deeper than any foundation I'd ever laid. Her lawyer fees alone could have bought a decent used car. One rainy Tuesday, I ran into her sister at the hardware store. She looked tired, worn down by the whole mess. "Mike," she said, clutching her shopping basket like a shield. I'm sorry. About everything." I nodded, keeping my distance. "How's she doing?" "Lost the house last week, moving in with Mom until—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "The foundation's board made it official yesterday, permanent termination." I picked up the screws I needed and headed for the checkout. "Tell her I hope she finds what she's looking for." And I meant it. Not out of kindness or cruelty, just truth. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just stepping back and letting people face the consequences of their own choices. That evening, I sat in my workshop, Buddy snoring softly in his bed by the door. The radio played old country songs while I worked on a cherry wood jewelry box, a commission from a client who wanted something special for his daughter's graduation. My hands moved steady and sure over the wood, each stroke of sandpaper revealing the natural grain beneath. A text buzzed my phone. Rick sending another update. Marcie's bankruptcy had been approved. All assets liquidated, debts discharged. A clean slate, but not the kind she'd wanted. I set my phone aside and went back to work. The wood beneath my hands was honest, true. No lies, no schemes, no hidden agendas. Just what it was. Nothing more, nothing less. You want to know the funny thing? I didn't feel like I'd won anything. Didn't feel like I'd lost either. What I felt was clarity. Like when you finally get your glasses prescription right and the world snaps into focus, everything sharp and clear and exactly what it is. The divorce papers felt lighter than I expected. Just a stack of documents ending 20 years, signed and notarized in clean black ink. No coffee stains, no tear marks, nothing to show how much weight they really carried. Funny how life's biggest moments can look so ordinary on paper. My lawyer had raised his eyebrows when I told him about giving the house to Rick. "You sure about this, Mike? It's a significant asset." But I'd never been more sure of anything. Some people might call it crazy, giving away a house I'd built with my own hands. But you know what? Sometimes the best way to move forward is to let go of what's holding you back. Rick and his wife, Jenny, came over that afternoon to sign the transfer papers. Jenny was still moving careful after the C-section, but her eyes lit up when she saw the nursery I'd converted from Marcie's old art room. "Mike, this is—" She touched the hand-carved wooden mobile I'd hung above where the cribs would go. "The girls are going to love it here." Rick clapped my shoulder, his grip firm. "You didn't have to do this, brother." "Yeah, I did." I gestured around us. "This place needs a family. Real one this time." We walked through each room, and I showed them all the little things they'd need to know. Where the water shutoff was, which floorboards creaked, and which ones I'd fixed. How to adjust the heating zones I'd installed last winter. Rick took notes on his phone while Jenny planned out where their furniture would go. "The twins' room gets perfect morning light," she said, touching her belly where the C-section scar was still healing. "And that window seat. Built that when Marcie said she wanted a reading nook." I ran my hand along the smooth oak. Never saw her use it once. After they left, I spent one last evening walking through the empty rooms. The walls still held my fingerprints under layers of paint. Every nail, every joint, every decision I'd made thinking I was building forever. The kitchen where I'd surprised Marcie with breakfast on Sunday mornings. The back deck where we'd watched meteor showers, my arm around her shoulders while she pointed out constellations I never quite learned to see. Remember those old westerns where the cowboy would run his hand along his horse's neck one last time before setting it free? That's how it felt, touching these walls. Each room held echoes of what could have been, but now they were just spaces waiting for new stories. In the kitchen, I pulled out a small note card, one of those fancy ones Marcie used to keep in her desk for thank you notes. The irony wasn't lost on me. I wrote 2 words, build wisely, left it propped against the coffee maker Rick would use every morning. Buddy waited in the truck while I locked up for the last time. The key made a final solid click in the door. No dramatic sunset, no swelling music, just the ordinary sound of metal against metal, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The drive to the cabin was quiet except for Buddy's soft snoring from the passenger's seat. No radio, no phone calls, just the rhythm of tires on asphalt and the occasional flash of headlights cutting through the dark. The cabin was about an hour north, tucked away on a piece of land I'd bought years ago as an investment but never developed. You know those moments when you're driving and your mind just sort of drifts? Not in a dangerous way, but in that peaceful space where thoughts come and go like birds passing overhead. That's what that drive felt like. Every mile put more distance between me and the life I'd thought I wanted, bringing me closer to something else. Something real. The darkness got deeper as I turned onto the gravel road leading to the cabin. Trees crowded in close, their branches making tunnels in my headlights. Buddy stirred, nose twitching at the smell of pine and lake water coming through the cracked window. No porch light waited to welcome us. No warm windows glowing in the dark. Just the outline of the cabin I'd built with my own hands, solid and patient, like it had been waiting all along. I sat there for a moment, engine off, listening to the tick of cooling metal and the whisper of wind in the trees. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what you thought you wanted and toward what you need. The first hints of dawn painted the sky in whispers of pink and gold. I'd been up since 4, couldn't sleep. But for once, it wasn't because of ghosts or regrets. Just the quiet anticipation of watching a new day begin. Steam curled up from my coffee mug, dancing with the mist that rolled off the lake's surface. Buddy stretched out beside me on the dock, his chin resting on his paws, watching ripples spread where fish broke the surface. The wooden planks beneath us were ones I'd laid myself just 3 months ago, each board cut and fitted by hands that knew exactly what they were doing. You ever notice how silence sounds different when you're at peace? It's not empty anymore, it's full of little things. The soft lap of water against the dock posts, the rustle of leaves in the morning breeze, a loon calling somewhere across the water, its cry echoing off the far shore. Behind us stood my cabin. Not our cabin, not the house that held 20 years of compromise and careful stepping around each other's feelings, just mine. Every beam, every joint, every decision made without checking if someone else approved. The cedar siding had weathered to that perfect silver gray, like it had grown right up out of the rocky shore. No fancy art room, no showcase kitchen, just honest spaces built for a simple life. I took another sip of coffee, letting the warmth spread through my chest. Rick had texted last night. Seems Marcie's foundation board hadn't just suspended her. They'd gone public with a full statement, distancing themselves from her breach of trust and moral conduct. Her carefully curated reputation, all those charity galas and committee meetings, dissolved like morning fog in sunlight. Daniel? He'd done what cowards always do, disappeared the moment things got real. Last I heard, he'd blocked Marcie's number and moved states away, leaving her to deal with the fallout alone. Karma's got a way of collecting its debts, doesn't it? The sun pushed higher, burning off the mist in golden sheets. Buddy's ears perked up at the sound of geese overhead, their V formations stark against the brightening sky. I remembered how Marcie used to say she couldn't stand the noise of nature, always needed music or TV running in the background. Out here, nature's music was all I wanted to hear. My phone buzzed, probably another client request. The business had doubled since I'd streamlined operations, focused on quality over quantity. Turns out, when you stop trying to fund someone else's dreams, you can build your own pretty damn well. I left the phone in my pocket. Work could wait until the sun finished rising. Funny thing about betrayal, it either breaks you or forges you stronger. When Marcie first left, I thought I was broken. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, could barely look at myself in the mirror. But somewhere between then and now, something shifted. Maybe it was that first morning at the gym, muscles burning with honest pain. Maybe it was signing the contract for my biggest project yet, hands steady on the paper. Or maybe it was right here, watching my reflection in the lake and recognizing the man looking back. The bankruptcy notice had come through my lawyer last week. Marcie's perfect world had crumbled. No job, no reputation, no safety net. The same day, I'd finished installing the last window in the cabin's reading nook. Not because someone else wanted it, but because I loved watching storms roll in across the water. Buddy nudged my hand, his gray muzzle showing more white these days. I scratched behind his ears, remembering how he'd stuck by me through the worst of it. Some loyalties don't need explaining or defending, they just are. The sun cleared the tree line, sending diamonds dancing across the water. Light caught the silver in my hair, earned every strand of it. In the distance, another loon called, its mate answering from somewhere closer to shore. Their voices echoed across the water, wild and free. I stood up, legs steady on the dock I'd built with my own hands. Behind me, my cabin rose against the morning sky, solid and true. No memories haunted these walls, no whispered phone calls or packed bags waiting by the door. Just clean wood, honest work, and the quiet knowledge that I'd survived everything they'd thrown at me. She left a man she thought was weak. I became unstoppable. I believe stories like this find us for a reason. If this one touched you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day, and tomorrow's might be the one your heart's been waiting for.